then guys, we're going to make a start. So welcome to today's webinar. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Barnes and I'm the Managing Director of MAP. We provide an outsourced finance function specifically for digital creative agencies, and I'm part of the Bulletproof agency network. And I'm joined here today by Mike. Give us a wave, Mike. Mike is from Riskbox Insurance, Ed from Zentum Financial Planning, and Andy from BLM Law. So Andy's standing in for his colleague Steve today, so I think he's probably been thrust in at last minute, but we're just going to give a quick update from each of the Bulletproof founders about what's happening in our worlds of professional service. As I say, we all service the digital creative sector, so this is our area of interest and expertise. We'll give a quick 90 seconds, Mike, maximum, update in our areas, and then we're going to move on to Victoria and Spencer. As I say, any questions, serious ones, put them in Q&A, and silly ones, put them in the chat box, please. Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Let's do it. Hopefully you can all hear me. A lot of you already know me. Mike, Riskbox, commercial insurance for agencies. All I'm going to quickly talk about is a couple of things that I've seen, and so for the rest of the team over the last couple of weeks. We've seen a lot of changes on the cover that's provided in respect of COVID. So we already know that going forward, business interruption, there will be literally no one who's going to give any sort of pandemic cover going forward. That's already known. What isn't necessarily as well known is on the liability side. So usually under public liability, you are covered should someone, catch effectively, be injured. That includes the definition of disease. So usually if someone was to, catch COVID and then allege that it's your fault, usually that would be covered. Now, going forward, that's going to change for some insurers. We don't know exactly which insurers that will happen over the period of time, but all we do know is there are a couple that are already reacting. So we've seen both Zurich and Allianz, both of them are beginning to remove that cover. So if you're with them, I would probably look at, shifting across as soon as it comes to renewal. Production risks, they definitely at the moment are looking to exclude COVID under the public liability area of that. And also under the cancellation area for obviously reshoots and so forth. I believe there is, I've seen some stuff about the government scheme that they're going to put in place for some of that stuff. Worth checking out, but it's not going to be straightforward and simple. Second thing we've seen is that insurers are being extremely strict on notification. So if you have any form of accident, it doesn't have to be COVID related, but any form of accident, let them know straight away. Same as if you got a grumbles on sort of professional indemnity and so forth, let them know straight away. The reason for it is normally you would have a fair bit of flex with insurers. They're normally quite reasonable. However, they're under a lot of pressure at the moment because a lot of them are going to, whether they like it or not, pay out a lot of money under the different things for COVID. So what's happening is they're getting squeezed from the reinsurers who are going to make them, be extremely strict on what's paid out and so forth. So they're the two things. We'll have some guides on this, by the way. So if anyone wants a copy of the guide, we've got a guide on COVID and liability insurance. So certain things to look out for. And we've also got a guide on claims notification, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks' time. So if you want to give us a shout, and I'm sure that's over 90 seconds, sorry.
Send us any links, Mike, to put in the follow-up email as well, please. And then I'm going to demote you now to a mere attendee. Bye-bye. Ed?
Yeah, so I guess just picking up on the insurance theme, there's a lot of key risks around business in terms of key person cover. We're seeing a lot of people trying to take that out at the moment, and actually demand is still high, but insurance companies are able to get through a lot of that work at the moment. So something to look at, and also something on the sort of protection side. But a will is just a basic building block of your personal financial plan. We see a lot of people that don't have wills, and it's something that you should actively consider if you don't have one already. We've still got the stamp duty cut up to £500,000 on houses until March 31st. So again, if you're looking to move in the sort of short term, something to be aware of. We're expecting ultimately that the Chancellor is going to have to draw back some of the debt in probably tax rises at some point with capital gains tax and probably pension allowance, something that we think may be may be attacked. So, you know, it's an opportunity at the end of this tax year to use up some of those allowances, especially on the pension side, perhaps. Employer pension contributions are deductible as business expenses. So, if you've got a corporation tax bill, possible route to bring that down. And it's just going to be a good time to sort of take stock and look at your finances over the next few months. Restrictions are going to probably keep you inside a lot more, and you know, it's probably just a good opportunity to do that coming up to Christmas as well. So yeah, that's the update from me.
Thanks, Ed. That's perfect. Thanks very much. Mike, we've got a question. Hopefully you're still listening and you've not gone and put your feet up somewhere else, but we've got a question about cyber insurance, whether there's any impact on cyber insurance. I assume COVID generally. So if you're there, I'll promote you back. We'll go to Andy first, and I'll come back to you to answer that question if you can. Andy?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I've been parachuted in this afternoon to take Steve's place, and just wanted first of all to give some background on me. I work in the commercial advisory team here at BLM, and since qualification I've always undertaken a mix of corporate, commercial and IP work. I joined BLM back in May, which is in the middle of lockdown, so I've not actually been into the office yet or met any of my colleagues, which has been a bit unusual. So but it's not, I've never regarded this as doom and gloom. And one thing I want to keep repeating today is the opportunity. We're seeing clients who are taking the chance to sort of put the foot on the ball and take stock of where they are. So it's more of an opportunity to knock your business into shape. And as one of my great heroes, Anthony H. Wilson, said, "This is Manchester. We do things differently here." Well, I think now's an opportunity for you to do things differently in your business. So take that chance to, on the commercial side, really understand the importance of contracts and use of terms and conditions. Make sure, you know, they're properly drafted, they're properly in place, and they're effective. More and more these days, we're seeing terms and conditions being challenged, and certainly with COVID, the effective use of what's called a force majeure clause, which is hopefully something which is properly drafted and which would protect you if you couldn't perform your part of a contract. So clients are reviewing their relationships with customers and suppliers and really looking at what contractual arrangements they've got in place. On the IP side, we're seeing clients who are taking the chance to really reorganize and protect valuable assets. So as with most people who are watching today, if you're in the creative sector, obviously intellectual property is key to your business, and clients are now understanding that potentially their IP or their key asset might be at risk. So there's quite a simple process you can go through in terms of protecting key assets, making sure assets are taken out of the firing line, and protected in a holding company. It's quite a simple process to go through, but it obviously gives you that security where you can ring fence IP and other assets, which are key for a business. On the corporate side, in terms of transactions, some clients have become nervous. Some clients have thought, "I've had enough, I want to sell up." So we're still seeing quite a lot of activity on the transactional side of things. Prices have obviously dropped. So pre-COVID prices are not what they were. So there's an opportunity to pick up a bargain. There's also a chance to do joint ventures and be more collaborative in your work with clients. So working together. But there are bargains out there on the transactional side. Also, unfortunately, COVID has been, it's hit people hard. A lot of businesses have failed. So if you fancy going fishing in the murky waters of insolvency, you can pick up a bargain again from an administrator. So again, there's options out there. But I didn't want to sort of end on a bad note. I wanted to end on a positive and just to emphasise the opportunity that's out there for clients, just to really knock things into shape and just to make your business a bit more bulletproof, to use a word, if that's possible. But yeah, plenty of positives, and it's not all doom and gloom on the legal side of things.
Thanks, Andy. That's really well articulated. We'll pay you later for the free bit of branding. Mike, have you just got a few seconds to talk about cyber insurance?
Yeah, I'll end on some doom and gloom for you all. No problem there. Cool. So at the moment, we're not really seeing any changes in the sort of insurance that's been given out. There's no real knee-jerk reaction in rates and so forth. But what we are seeing is a lot more claims. So we are seeing a lot more things where purely and simply because people are going to be working remotely, they're going to have different IT security, different procedures. It's different management because the employee is generally the weak link. So we're seeing a lot more from that. Again, we've got a guide. We didn't write it. Someone who does cyber insurance stuff does that on how to get the remote working correct from a risk management perspective. Again, if anyone wants any of these guides or anything or wants to chat, then just give us a shout. We'll send them through. I promise you they'll be a lot more interesting than listening to me if they're a guide. I promise you that. But hopefully that answers that question.
Cheers, Mike. I'm not going to take too long because Victoria is going to be speaking on behalf of MAP soon. But in terms of the government measures, I guess two things. One is, I think most people are aware of what's going on now, and you're aware of what CBILS and bounce back and furlough are all about by now. I'm conscious that there have been some updates in the last couple of hours that I am not up to date with because I've just come straight out of a meeting, so I'm not going to try and pretend I know all the information of that, but MAP as usual will be providing updates on what it means for you within the WhatsApp group and over an email broadcast as well. Just to echo a couple of the things that Andy said actually, one is definitely I found that this hasn't been as bad as many anticipated. Sorry if you're watching this and you have been badly affected, but overall it feels like the impacts have not been as bad as we feared at the start of lockdown. I think a lot of business owners have used this as an opportunity to really take stock on the businesses and what it is that they're trying to achieve. We've had more interest than ever, as Andy says, on the topic of exit planning, M&A activity. We set up the agency directory. So many of you have already listed your agency within that directory so that you can explain and list what it is that you do, the sectors that you operate in and the types of technology you use and the services that you deliver. And pleased to see that there's now some activity going on between the agencies on that directory, both informally working on projects and having more formal conversations about maybe being able to do something bigger together. So it's a good opportunity to take stock and see whether, if you're finding it very lonely running a business and you think you'd quite like to be doing more with other smart, forward-thinking, like-minded people, then start to reach out and have conversations and see if there's other ways that you can go. Also, we've been helping clients with a lot of group restructuring, management buyouts, that kind of thing. So businesses getting ready to pass to the next generation of family or management. So if that's something you're interested in, then give us a shout or BLM a shout, and we'll be able to help you between us. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Victoria. If you want to just start sharing your screen, Victoria, I'll get everyone else back down to attendee so that we can focus on Victoria, and then I'll bring Spencer on once Victoria is finished. If you want to share your screen and then your presentation, Victoria.
Okay.
So as I say, throughout the presentation, if you just want to post any questions in the Q&A, we'll keep them till Victoria's finished in about 20 minutes time, and I'll ask them to her at that point. Over to you, Victoria.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The lovely topic of management information that we're going to talk about this afternoon. And I'm sure most of the audience here today has already recognised that, yes, it's something that we all need. We probably acknowledge that we should have it, but it's that little something that, it takes something or someone to trigger the need for us to do something about it. Because too often that we get caught up in the day-to-day of our business and its activities and the priorities, and it's at that point when someone, be that like an investor, a lender, or changes in the economic climate, asks for something, or there's something that triggers a need for something, that we suddenly find ourselves scrambling around and trying to compile it. And COVID was a really good example of that for me, in that I've worked with lots of businesses over the years, you know, small businesses, some of them at which might have been very kind of cash rich and never really had to worry too much about looking at their cash flow on a daily basis. But suddenly, no matter how robust that business was, COVID lands and they might have been working in, let's say, you know, with the hospitality sector. And suddenly they find themselves, well, where's my revenue going to be coming from? I'm not going to be getting any in the next few months because they're going to be shutting down. What's that mean? I need to get all over my cash. So it takes that little something sometimes to trigger the need. And then what we all find ourselves doing is scrambling around. And then we get it in place and, you know, and we work on it for a little bit. And then, you know, we get back to day and the reality and we ignore it. And often at times we find that actually we are producing data, but, you know, is it meaningful? And actually, is it of any value to us? But we're just going through the motions. And I'm sure all this sounds familiar. So if you're sat there and you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, that's me. Well, don't worry, you're not alone. But there are things that we can do about it. And that's what I'm hopefully here to share with you today. You know, I feel your pain. I've been there and thankfully, because of the pains businesses like yourselves have at times, that's why I've continued to work and do what I do. So my background is I'm a qualified accountant, 20 years or probably more now since I qualified. And throughout my career, I've largely worked within kind of commercial senior finance roles, both within corporate businesses, startups, SMEs, and focusing on very much driving performance, improving profitability, driving efficiencies, revenue growth. And the ways in which we need to do that is we need to understand where we are and what management information we need to do that. So if I just move on, bear with me when here we go. So I refer to it a little bit as the 3 W's, the what's, the whys and the wherefores. Okay, what is management information? Well, it's infinite. There's so much data around today that to some extent we've got too much data. And as a result, we struggle at times to actually know what we should be using and not using and what is meaningful. And we can have financial data, we can have non-financial data, and we're kind of awash with it. But we don't often take the time to stop and think about actually, is this of value to me? And are we just going through the motions? And it's essential management tool, as I see it. It's not just something that a business of a certain size or in a certain industry sector needs, or depending on where you are in terms of your growth. We all need management information to run the business. And there are some types of information that will be common to every business, you know, and we should all have in place standard things such as, you know, your cash flow forecast, you know, your management accounts. We should know exactly who we owe money to, who owes us money, you know, what have we got pending. We should have those basic things in place, but they're not enough. You know, having the basic things is just the start, but there's a lot of things that are unique to our business and unique to the climate in which, you know, we're operating within, the customers that, you know, the markets that we're trading in, the people that we're working with. So to some extent, if you've come to today's session and thinking at the end of this, you're going to get a little list from me that will say, these are all the things you need. You can take that away and you can go and do your kind of quick checklist and see what have we got missing. Okay, we'll address those. We'll put it in place. We're sorted. Happy days. Well, unfortunately, it kind of doesn't work like that. There isn't a one size fits all. And even if there was, what's going to work today is not going to work tomorrow. And why do we need it? Well, we need to understand very much kind of where we are. You know, it's all about exercising control over our operations and what we're doing. And to some extent, you know, what we don't want to do though with management information is almost stifle entrepreneurialism as well. So there has to be that balance. And that's why I always refer to it as what's meaningful. It's not just management information for the sake of it. And we don't want to run a business completely on management information. We have to find that balance. Gut instinct, entrepreneurialism, going with your gut, you know, is so important at a certain point. But if that's all we ever do and we ignore the data that is there and the meaningful data, then that's quite a risky strategy. And what we should be doing as we evolve is underpinning kind of our gut instincts and our entrepreneurialism with some data behind it to support our decision making, which ultimately then will help us improve performance, which helps us then create value for our business. But why? You know, I can sit here and I say the 3 W's, the what's, the whys and the wherefores. I hear you, you know, but there are reasons for it. I can explain why we're not doing it. You know, I can justify reasons as to why we're not doing what we should be doing. You know, we've got competing priorities, that there's bigger things for us to focus on. That's a common theme. Whenever I've worked with businesses and asked for information, they say, oh, well, no, we just, you know, we've got other priorities. Well, management information is a priority for your business, and we need to find that meaningful data that's going to help you really ensure that you're maximizing all your opportunities and you're minimizing your risks. But perhaps you don't know what you need. You know, perhaps it is a case of, right, I've got lots and lots of data, but I just don't know what I need or what I should be using. And I've got so much, I almost don't know where to start. And I don't know what I should be doing, so I push it aside. Or maybe it's a case of, well, you've implemented systems that you're expecting to deliver this information, but you're disappointed with what you're getting from them. That's often a common theme I've found over my years of working with industry and businesses, is that, you know, when I go in and ask questions and ask what systems are being used and what information is available, I often hear, yeah, we put this system in, you know, we were told it was great, it does all this, it's wonderful, but we've not found it to be very good. And so now we've adopted another system, but we've taken a different system, we're just putting this in place, it's going to be a lot better. And you come back 6 months down the line and the same things are there, you know, the system, oh, it's the system now, we were sold it, but it's not doing what it should be doing. And often it's not the system, it's how we're using it. And maybe we've not got anyone assigned ownership over that system or over the data and accountability. So it really doesn't get championed as a discipline in the business. Or it could be that, you know, we're receiving data and we're getting data from our heads of department and from people, or, you know, suppliers and professional service providers, but we don't actually understand what we're getting. And as a result, therefore, we push it aside. Or maybe it's, we already know that, you know, okay, but the data, it's all right, but I know it's not right, you know, it's not complete, can't rely on it. And all of these things are often reasons and almost barriers that stop people doing anything about management information. But it's something that you can do, and you don't have to be a big business. You don't have to have, you know, a significant amount of investment to make this valuable for your business. So what do we need to do? So what I would say, if you're sat here now, is that, you know, you can't rush this. It takes time. It's definitely not a sprint. So again, if you're thinking after today's session, right, I want to make this happen, you know, be realistic about what can be achieved, and you know, and find that balance. Don't just focus all on this. Yes, it's got to be part of your business, but, you know, there are a lot of other competing priorities. So you've got to be realistic about what you can do and what timeline, and have realistic goals. And coming back to my point earlier about often the reasons that we don't embrace the data is that we've got too much of it, and we'll almost think lean. Sometimes less is a lot more. If you can't see the wood for the trees, then just throw it all away and start again, and you know, start from scratch. And that's probably the best advice that I could give you today, is almost ignore whatever you've got, and if you can afford a few hours, you know, switch off your machines, you know, ignore all the data reports that come out of the wonderful technology that you've got in your business, and sit there with that traditional kind of pen and paper and post-its, and think exactly about, what am I wanting to achieve in my business, and almost break that down into goals. You know, let's look at the next quarter. What do I need to do? What's important for me today? I've got all this information, but what's going to be really, really meaningful for me today? And think about that, and determine then, if you do that, you can then start to determine, okay, what information you require. You know, if you're really wanting to get an understanding and you've already taken a decision that you're wanting to grow a certain part of one of your service offerings in the business, then you want to be able to monitor exactly how you're going to be performing against that target. So let's just say, as an example, you see that if you're in, let's say, the web development service part of your agency, and you're doing web development, you're wanting to see growth coming from the fact that, you know, I'm not just winning projects, but I'm getting them retainers from that project. And, you know, at the moment, we don't get a lot of people, you know, they come along, they spend money with us, we get a web project, and that's great, but we then don't convert them into a maintenance kind of retainer and a support and development retainer. So if that's one of your targets that you've decided to focus on today, then great, that's brilliant. We've got a target, we know where we're expecting growth to come from. But then consider, okay, well how do I monitor against that? What am I going to need? What do my revenue reports actually look like? And do we actually put any detail into our revenue reports that allow us to even break down the services that we're selling? Or is it just project, and is it just retainer? And actually, that data that sits under there, oh, it's not there. And when we do that and we go through that process, we can then start to identify gaps. And then we can identify, okay, where does that data actually come from? Where is it sat? Is it in a system? If it's not in a system, why is it not in a system? Why are we not capturing that? And that basic process of very much taking it really back and becoming very, very lean and starting, as I see it, very much from the beginning again, and identifying and determining what it is you require will then allow you to start building the base foundations and then start to create meaningful information. And yes, we do need to develop and build infrastructures. And, you know, there's lots of cloud technology available to us today. You know, long gone of those days where management information was only something that the big companies could afford. You know, there is a lot of technology in the marketplace today that's very, very affordable and can be very, very valuable. But there's no point spending money on these systems if you're not going to actually implement them in a robust and a controlled manner, and you're not going to structure them in a way whereby it can be aligned to your business needs. Don't just assume because your competitor across the way has had that system and, you know, everyone in the market has that system, it's got to be the right thing for us. Because if you take that approach, you're probably going to end up to be disappointed. What you need to think about is what you want to get out, and come back very much to, okay, what do I really want? And when you understand what it is you really, really, really need to get under, that should shape and form the scope and the structure of what you require. So let's just take as an example, you know, things that I've seen in recent months with my time with MAP. You know, lots of businesses, I know, and agencies will have time recording systems in place. And, you know, particularly during the times of COVID, it's okay, well, you know, staff, you know, there's a lot of cost spent on staff. And if they're not revenue generating, then what are we going to do about it? But ask yourself now, as an example, okay, every month at the end of the month, can I work out how much of that staff, that payroll cost that's going out of my business is actually related to fee generating work? And what percentage of that, and what is the cost value in pounds terms of that money that I'm spending every month that doesn't generate me any revenue at all? And do we know that? And do we know what that cost was last month? Because every time we're spending on that and we've got unproductive time, then that's costing us as a business. And it may be, as an example, that unproductive time is not fee generating, but it's being used to create other value for the business. It could be working on internal, like software developments, internal research and development projects. But if your timesheet recording system only records that time as admin, well, you're never really going to know exactly what is going on, and you're not able to analyze it. So again, that highlights the need of, you might put a need to actually go back and think about your timesheet and recording. Are the reports that we're generating from that, are they telling me anything? Or am I just doing it because everyone does it? Am I really getting anything from this? And, you know, are we getting profitability reports? But are they really truly profitability reports? And we're saying we've made X profit on a certain project, but, you know, is your time recording system actually accounting for all the freelancers that you've got working? Or actually, oh no, we don't put those in because, you know what, they just send us an invoice. Oh, good point, we need that. So again, if you've not got it robust and you've not got procedures and processes set out from the start, then the value of what you're going to get out at the end is going to be somewhat reduced. The system is only ever going to be as good as what you put in, and how you put that in and what you do with that should be controlled. There should be processes and procedures around it to ensure that there's a consistent way of recording data, so that when you do pull reports out and you start to extract data that you need to run your business, you can rely on it. And, you know, if we don't put the process and procedures in place, you know, what are our staff supposed to do? You know, the best way of ensuring that we're getting the value is also to ensure that our staff are on board with what we're doing and they understand why they're being asked to do something. You know, we're not trying to be Big Brother. I think that's one of the key things that I would, you know, advise, particularly in agencies and service companies that are asking staff to record their time. It's not about being Big Brother. Make it very clear about that. It's about us trying to understand where best to invest our resources for the maximum return for the business. And if they can understand that, they will take greater responsibility in actually when their data, you know, they're inputting their data. So training and educating is really, really important, because we need our businesses to have buy-in, and they need to be all joined together and understand the value which can be achieved if we all adhere to these processes and there's a reason for them.
2 more minutes, Victoria.
Okay. And we need to continually invest and review, and we need to challenge as well. And so you've heard me probably very early on at the start of this talk very much about the need for some standardized reports that we need in the business and that shouldn't be ignored and that are common to all businesses. And also I've spoke very much about building an infrastructure and the foundations. So this diagram here, I'm using to kind of demonstrate how we can't really do all the sexy and the value added activities in our business if we don't actually get the basics and the foundations in place. So the part of the chart in yellow will probably resonate with existing MAP clients who, you know, have seen the benefits that cloud technology can bring to a business. So, you know, with their bookkeeping, with their reporting through Xero, that might be, or other cloud software that they're engaging with, and have seen those benefits. And it's really, really important for me that every business, no matter what size, what shape, what industry sector, gets a base foundation in place, because without that, it becomes very, very difficult to extract meaningful data. And once you've got that base position in place, you can then start to develop and move up the mountain. And to some extent, that mountain then, you know, it can be as high as anything. It can just keep going. But the basics are so fundamental. So if you're sat here today, one of the things I would really, really encourage everyone to do when they think about financials and data is ask yourself, do we have really a robust infrastructure and foundations in place that can be built upon? Because ultimately, if you're wanting to get meaningful data out of your business and starting to use data in a way that's going to drive performance and add value, you've got to get the basics in place first. Too many times have I worked over the last 10 years in businesses who've engaged my services and want help on, you know, their next stage of growth, and they want to look at how they're going to maximize revenue opportunities and improve their profitability and grow the business. And I come in and really what I should be doing is all the things in pink and the bits beyond the pink. But what I often find is in my early weeks, they haven't got the bits in yellow. And so what happens is a lot of time then has to get spent on the yellow and then on the blue before we can even get to the pink. And that becomes very, very costly for a business. So if you're at the start of your journey today, or your business is still relatively young, then no matter what size you are and where you are, really embrace the parts in the yellow first. It might seem a little bit of a pain or a headache or something that, you know, I don't need to have yet. But I promise you, the investment will be worthwhile, and you will save yourself a lot of pain and a lot of expense in the future.
Victoria, we've got a question from Johnny, which is about non-financial KPIs. And I know you said earlier that no one size fits all, but he's asked if there's an example of what sort of data you'd record against non-financial KPIs. I think you've got a little slide on that, which you were a bit reluctant to share because you said, you know, it's obviously unique to the business, but do you want to just do a minute or so on that?
Yeah, so so what I've got here is a slide at the end. As Paul said, it's very, very difficult just to capture everything that's, you know, going to be relevant for the audience. But I've given a flavour here of the sorts of data information that could be of value to digital agencies. And when we talk about, you know, some non-financial things, let's consider a scenario whereby, you know, you are striving for growth and you know that you're quite successful in kind of getting new opportunities. But the problem that you've had to date historically is converting those. So, you know, if we part some of the financials and the revenue that, you know, you're ultimately striving for as growth first, we want to get deeper into being able to record, okay, well, how many new opportunities do we get in every week, every month, every quarter? How many of those, where do those new opportunities come from? How many of those opportunities then lead to an actual quote? And how many of those quoted opportunities actually then lead to an actual job? And if we're not recording that journey for us from start of a prospect, a new interest to actually that job, and we're not recording the detail and the journey that we go on to convert to that job, then we've nothing to look back on and analyze to actually ascertain, okay, well, why are we not converting well? Or then when we start to convert, what are the things that have suddenly triggered us and that we can learn from? So that would be an example of, you know, a non-financial KPI for a business, you know, an agency that I would be wanting to look at if I was an owner. You know, your hours as an example, you know, obviously are linked to payroll expenditure, but very simply, you know, looking at the percentage of how many hours were fee generating and how many weren't. And then when you look at the unchargeable hours, you know, what was the mix of those? Maybe just categorizing, you know, putting 3 categories and giving the staff, removing the option to kind of record admin. And, you know, you might want to put down training, research, and just trying to get an understanding. And if you've got a common theme of lots of people are spending time on training, is that valuable, or would it be better to actually go and put them on courses than rather than internal staff train? So those are some flavours.
Thanks, Victoria. And just to be clear, everyone, you know, Victoria's in now. She's here. She's working with MAP, and she's available to speak to you free of charge initially. You know, so if you just want to run through some stuff in your business, as you can see, this is not just finances. Victoria's worked across pretty much every area of many different businesses, and she understands the difficulty of getting some of these things in place, and all the, you know, the people constraints and challenges of making this stuff work. So if there's anything you want to run by her or myself, then please feel free to get in touch, and we'll help in whatever way we can. I'm going to bring Spencer in. Victoria, thank you very much, and we'll see you again at the end. If anyone has any other questions that you think of Victoria, we can bring her back on when we come to the end of the session today. So there you go. All focus on you, Spencer, if you want to just start sharing your screen. So I think most of you will know of Spencer, but he probably spends more of his time down the wrong end of the country, and we don't get to see him very much in the Northwest. So we're delighted to have secured him today to come and speak to you all. Spencer has successfully built and sold a very fast growing agency, so he's been through many of the pains that you all have, and he now consults along with his colleagues in the boardrooms of many other agencies. So he comes with a lot of experience, and we wanted him to come on today to start to help us start to think about you know, hopefully growing our businesses again and focus on some of the opportunities that are out there in a post-COVID-19 world. So welcome, Spencer. Just need to unmute you, Spencer. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm mute now.
There you go.
So thank you for inviting me to speak. Always a pleasure to get an opportunity to speak to some agency owners, and we've got the title today, Generating Leads and Sales for Your Agency in a Post-COVID-19 World. So for those, hopefully most of you have come across me by now, but if those of you who haven't, my name's Spencer Gallagher. I'm the founding partner of Cactus. We're an agency growth consultancy. We look after around £125 million worth of agencies and about 1,000 employees now. We're probably the largest dedicated agency growth consultancy now in the UK. And so, yes, Paul said, I'll talk more about my journey just briefly to give you a bit of a background. But since growing and selling a business now, we've obviously helped other people successfully grow their business onto whatever they want it to become. So, but I feel a bit of a fraud really, because actually in the last couple of weeks, we have announced that Danny Turnbull is actually going to be the representative for us in the Northwest. He joins us as a managing partner. As Paul said, it was getting harder and harder to get the time to come up to the north of England. Danny and I go way back. He's an extremely talented, experienced agency managing director and owner, and now a non-exec. So really, he should be doing the talk, but we did organise this quite a long time ago. So I will give the talk today, but please do connect to Danny, because he is our sort of local man on the street. And I'll provide his details at the end of the presentation. So, and you know, Cactus is working with several clients with MAP very successfully. I'm not sure if Paul actually knows this yet, but we both work together on a client called Seeker, and I think we're fingers crossed they're going to be one of the top 10 fastest growing tech businesses in the UK when Deloitte announced their league table later this year. So some real good proof there of us working together, but also some of the success we get from our agency growth. So I had quite a humble background. I left school at 16, no qualifications, left home at 16, very little privilege. For me, I started selling clothes in Top Man as a 16-year-old. And the only reason that I had any connection with computers was that my mum had a part-time job working in Sinclair, and she one day brought me home a ZX81. So in my spare time, I was able to learn a little bit about computers. I don't know if she stole the computer or she got given it, because we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but whatever, I managed to get a little bit of a hobby and interest in computers. And by 1994, 2 years after Tim Berners-Lee had invented hypertext, I was already starting to learn to program HTML and to build websites. So by 1999, after being made redundant 3 times or twice in 1 year and going through 3 jobs, I started in a purple shed in my mum's back garden. My business partner, Pete, always tells people that I started in the purple shed on the little bit on the right-hand side, but I can assure you it was the building on the left. And over the next 11 years, we very successfully grew one of the UK's largest. In fact, we ended up being the 8th largest digital agency in the UK. And then Gyro, which is where I first met Danny, came along and bought my agency, and we took it on then to another level. And basically I became part of a leadership team in a £100 million agency. So quite a successful journey. We grew very fast, sometimes a little bit too fast. We also were a Deloitte Tech Fast 50 growing business. Got to work with some wonderful clients on that journey. You know, started off building websites for Indian restaurants and, you know, local hire shops and just all sorts of very small websites. And then by the end of the journey, built Liverpool Football Club's website. Was, you know, working with the Premier League. Was probably the largest builder of technology in sports bespoke in Europe. At the end of it, so it was, you know, a fantastic journey and all organic. And you know, we were things like sponsoring the Super World Rally team, which was gave us a lot of fun through the clients that we had as well. In the last couple of years, my business partner and I, we wrote a book called Agencynomics. We thought we'd only sell about 3 to 4 dozen copies of it. And we've been very humbled by the fact that it became a genuine bestseller without us having to gamify it. We've sold several thousand copies, some fantastic and very kind reviews from people. And we are actually in the process of writing the second version of that. COVID has changed a lot of the rules in the book. So the second edition will be coming out next February. So if you haven't got a copy, please get one quickly, because we will be taking it off sale for a few months while we update it. And it is full of some very useful, and as everyone always says to me, most people who are entrepreneurs or run businesses, they often fail to not read a whole book, but everyone always assures me this book is full of so much practical advice. It's easy to read cover to cover. So today, Agencynomics, on the back of the book, we have a free support community for independent agencies. We run it as a not-for-profit. It's a social enterprise. It's kind of our way of paying it forward and giving back. And we're also now investors and on the board of the Alliance of Independent Agencies, which is a trade body that's there to support the independent sector. I also have a vodcast and podcast called Agency Phonics. And because we're talking about sales today, I just wanted to put it in. If you can look at episodes 28, 12, 23, 26 and 9, then, top right, you'll see Phil Jones, who is the person who organises the wonderful Stodge lunches up in Manchester. Top left, Daniel Priestley, for those of you who've read the book Key Person of Influence, and your very own Ash Jones, who is one of the people that was behind Steve Bartlett from Social Chain's adventures in building him up as a big agency influencer. More about that later. So the reason I'm here today is to really just give you some really down to earth practical actions to help you with your sales in this new post-COVID world, because some things have changed. There's a lot that's still the same, but there's definitely some really kind of underlying the trends that I've seen that have really helped my clients and people I know win business in the last few months. But today, really, the reason why we talk about this subject is we ran a poll in our community recently. What's the one business challenge that keeps you most awake at night? And I'd always thought it was cash flow and cash that would be number one, but actually new business came out significantly higher. So hopefully by me sharing this information today, I'll be able to help some of you sleep a little bit better at night. So my fascination with agency new business very much started once I'd sold my company. I was always obsessed when I was growing my business, trying to understand where new business was coming from, how I could, how I could improve it. But when I sold my business, the agency owner of the £100 million business, he turned around to me and he said, "I will share with you the secret of agency new business." And I was like, wow, there's a secret. And that really got me, after that conversation, it really got me kind of almost started to obsess really around, where do leads actually come from in agencies? And so I think, to summarize, I've probably spent 21 years now, 10,000, hours as an agency owner, and certainly probably 10 to 15,000 hours as an agency advisor, studying pipelines. I've studied over £1 billion worth of sales pipelines. I'm a curious individual. I want to know where deals are coming from, how people are winning them. I'm very fortunate to see about £100 million worth of pipelines monthly. So I get to see all the lead sources. And for those of you who read the book, you'll see that I discovered something that seemed to be very consistent in every agency, which was there are 4 key areas that new business leads from into agencies tend to come from these 4 areas. And I affectionately called it originally the 30-30-30-10, but I've moved it on, and I'll tell you more about that through this presentation. So before I continue today and talk more about that area, I don't want to sort of just rule out the fact that, of course, as an agency, you need to have, strong, clear positioning. You need to have some kind of marketing strategy in place. And that has to be underpinned by the fact that as service businesses, we tend to win business, unlike product businesses, by building trust, which is we often call chemistry. We have chemistry meetings. And we demonstrate our capability, which we often, call our credentials. So just to remind you that, when we win new business as agencies, we have to make sure that we're building trust. People procuring us, do they trust the agency and its people? And do they trust that the agency can deliver the solution that they need, and actually have they prove that they've delivered it successfully previously. So at the heart of everything we do is chemistry, creds, and delivery. And then agency sales process is sort of made up really in 3 areas, but I want to make it very clear today, because I'm talking a lot about lead generation, but of course existing clients play a major part of that lead generation. And so, you know, there are probably 4 key areas that every agency must really focus on. And I think we're often very poor with the first one, marketing. So, you know, we need to have marketing to generate leads. We often recruit salespeople because we think they generate leads, but salespeople are very good at taking the leads and organizing them and taking the prospect through the sales process from qualified to close. We then have a client service team to nurture and to farm, to grow our existing business. And then we have, for those people who are in maybe more, who are more creatively running agencies or more technical, what we often find is that those agencies tend to need to also apply an acquisition strategy to grow. So I think one of the things for me when I first started doing Cactus was I thought it was all about growing your clients and finding new business. But the reality is there are some people that do need to grow through acquisition. I've got a couple of creative clients I work with, and you know they've struggled to grow through sales methods, but they have actually been very successful at buying businesses and you know, growing those clients accordingly. So to validate the 30-30-30-10, which I kind of discovered around sort of 2013, 2014, and decided that, you know, the last 5 years, there's been a lot, it seems like a lot of change in new business. There's been a lot more content strategies out there. I commissioned a survey to really understand where were leads coming from. So we actually ran the UK's largest ever lead generation survey. We asked agencies to tell us what was the lead source of their largest client. So even though we had some smaller agencies come back, it was always the larger client, which, you know, in many cases, most small agencies have one reasonably large client. And we basically got back some, you know, some fantastic results, really. I mean, the first thing was we wanted to just make sure that everything on my original sort of 4 areas was going to be covered, but we actually uncovered lots of other things, which I'll explain in a second. And then second to that, I then commissioned in association with someone called the Network One, who's basically a sort of a company that helps you build a network on a more global basis. So they work with probably something like about 1,000 agencies across the world. So we ran another survey with them to 53 countries. It was actually 54 countries, but the North Korean entry was definitely a fake one, so we had to weed that one out. But 53 countries took part, and we wanted to also understand globally, was there a difference in the way that they were winning new business? So once again, what was the lead source of the largest client? So we learned 3 things. The first thing we learned was that the lead generation system, the original 30-30-30-10, which I'll explain more about what that means to those of you who don't know already, it showed us that those 4 ways that leads are sourced had actually almost leveled out. You know, the 30-30-30-10 is 30% and the 10%. We'd found it kind of there or thereabouts. It became more around the 25% each area. And that was great for us to see. The second thing that and I'll explain those shortly, but the second thing we found was that there was only 12 or 13 lead sources out of around 40 areas that agencies can win leads that made up 80% of how they won their largest client. So just because an agency does some kind of cold calling activity or uses an external new business agency, and yes, you can win business from it, it obviously isn't the main ways that agencies win business. The main ways that we're coming up with the same 12 and 13 on both the global and the local survey. So it made it easier for us to understand where agencies should focus their time and effort and money to get a better ROI. Of course, it doesn't mean that the other 20 or 30 ways don't work. They do. They just maybe cost more money and perhaps deliver, a lower return on investments. So here I'm going to summarize these later on, but here were the main 12 ways that were the 80%. And then these were the 13 ways that came from the global survey, and they pretty much cross over. There's a couple of differences, but not much in it overall. The third thing we learned was that 50% of all agency leads that led to the agency's largest client had actually derived from one kind of referral or another. And in fact, we almost thought that data probably wasn't right because it was so high. But then when we ran the international survey, 65% of the largest clients from all of the agencies, they were all independent agencies. I just want to stress that, no network agencies, but 65% came from a referral. So if there is a silver bullet in agencies, this was probably the closest thing to it. Now, in my day job, I get agencies call me up every day, or I have calls booked in every day where an agency will ring me up, and the conversation will normally go like this. Hey, Spencer, I'm looking to grow my agency. One of the biggest problems we've got is most of our business comes from referral, and we need to fix that. And I'm like, why do you need to fix it? That's brilliant. But what we noticed was that actually the referrals were great, but they weren't proactive referrals. These are referrals that are just coming in, and there wasn't much any sort of strategy or plan behind that. But this was still very exciting. Again, we'll come into that slightly later on. In fact, when we dug deeper into the 50 and 65%, we found there were 13 key sources that all referrals came from. Now, I have actually written a training program on how to drive proactively referrals into your business, and it will be, it's not live yet, but it will be live in the coming weeks or months, so please keep an eye out for it. And it will talk you through how to turn, you know, those referrals from being reactive into you being able to drive more of them, which I think is a very powerful area for those of you who are maybe you say not less extroverted as agency owners, you're more inward looking, you're focusing more on the quality of your products and service. That technique could apply to you a lot better and you feel more comfortable. So here are the 4 areas that I discovered originally and I then revalidated. The first one is NEST. It stands for networking, speaking, thought leadership and events. The second area is partnerships, strategic alliances. The third area was your ex-clients. The clients have left you and taken them somewhere else, taking you with them, somewhere else. And or your existing clients referring you to other people to work with. And then lastly, which was the original 10% area, which I used to call outbound, I now call marketing activity. The marketing activity was more like the traditional things like email marketing, SEO, pay-per-click, and include things like PR, outbound marketing, marriage brokers, and other areas like that. And although that hadn't fully grown to 25%, it had doubled up to around 20%. And if I show you this in a pie chart, just to give you a bit more clarity, in the this is the global results, you can see that the NEST area, the networking, the speaking, where people are, you know, promoting their thought leadership and they're organizing events or attending events, 35%, over a third of the leads were coming from that area. And, you know, no longer was it 30, or even the 25 I'm now suggesting. The partnerships, again, 25%. So really solid results in those areas. Client referrals, slightly lower from the global perspective than the 25 or 30 I'm used to seeing. But I do believe that there's a training issue generally around client services and people actually being much smarter about how they ask for client introductions and referrals. And then the marketing activity area, which for me had always been traditionally 10%, was clearly one of the fastest growing areas. The UK survey showed very similar results from the 4 areas. The NEST was the highest performing again. The partnerships were slightly weaker though. The client referrals was much stronger in the UK. And the marketing activity area, again, the same as the global area, had doubled up to about 20%. So again, the 4 areas equally all seem to perform very well. And so in my experience, the agencies that I go into, and I'll conclude with this at the end in more detail, but is, you know, as an agency, you've got to get all 4 areas right. I'm sure if you look at your business closely, you're probably good at 1 or 2 areas. But if you can get all 4 areas firing for you, you could double or treble your sales. So pre-COVID, just to recap, there were a few kind of negative things happening around agencies. I hope you're all kind of aware of this. There was a lot of talk about brands taking agencies in-house. There was this whole conversation around consultancies, basically buying up agencies and reshaping the world forever. And then there was, huge amounts of talks about, agencies, basically, it's the end of agencies. I mean, the Brexit conversations were relentless. And I hope now that everybody here understands that, having been through COVID, whatever happens in Brexit now, we'll all completely smash through that. And it really and truly, unless your clients are in difficult sectors like maybe, manufacturing around Brexit, actually most service businesses shouldn't really be affected. But then we also saw lots of talks about a pending crash, because as we all know, the economy works in 8 to 10 year cycles, and well, lo and behold, 10 years later, something happens to cause the market to crash. So, but this negativity causes a lack of confidence in the market, and us agencies, we need the market to be confident to succeed. Lastly, we had a lot of talk about disruption and transformation. And this was another thing that was impacting me. A lot of people were saying that AI was going to come in and take over agencies, and lots of people talking about the death of the website businesses. In fact, in more recent terms, I've heard Campaign now saying it's the end of the account manager. So there's always these constant kind of stories coming out. But I think that actually the COVID period has really addressed these areas really well. I think a lot of these areas that were under threat have actually been solved through the COVID period, especially this one around, employees demanding more flexible working, and everyone trying to have to deal with this kind of, we had like agencies like Lab bringing a 4-day week in. So there were lots of kind of, challenges around the work dynamic, which I hope we've all kind of now managed to resolve through the COVID period by working and being able to provide much more flexibility in the way we approach things. And then also one of the things that was happening probably around pre-COVID, but certainly in the COVID period, was this, someone had written about 3 years ago, actually in 2017, in 3 years from now, if you don't have a personal brand, no one's going to work with you. And I really tuned into that and noticed that there were some underlying trends that were backing that up. But during the COVID period, I think we started to see some of these things come true. So we started to see, really going up to COVID, people like, Manchester's, or Social Chain for Manchester, obviously, Stephen Bartlett, growing a several 100-person agency in just a few years because he was acting as an agency owner, as an influencer. For those of you who know Gary Vaynerchuk, he did a very similar thing stateside by creating an agency with an influencer at the top. He had massive growth. And I noticed there was a correlation between the people who had strong personal brands and the speed of the agencies that were growing pre-COVID. And just before COVID happened and the market started to come down, it was very obvious again that we needed to make sure that we learned some very valuable lessons about what happens in downturns, because normally it's the clients that stop spending, and then you have to start pivoting and looking for new areas. And I certainly, over the past few years, have been nagging this to a lot of agencies, saying, agencies need to focus continually on evolving their businesses forward, because otherwise they become commoditized. And so in the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of businesses that haven't moved forwards, especially those who focus on simple web design and brochure design, that are being commoditized by Squarespace, Wix, and other online tools, and trying to encourage them to move higher up the value chain. So, and make them focus on what I call it the now, next, and future. And, for those of you who know the two people here, Gary Vaynerchuk is always talking about the next and future. And Mark Ritson, who's a defunct marketing professor, is always talking about the now, and, trying to keep people in the, with the realistic, where are the viewers now? But actually the reality is that both of them are right. In one hand, you've got to focus on what people need now, but you've also got to be very aware that the market and business transformation and the landscape is moving quite quickly now, as technology takes, a grip of being at the heart of most businesses. So during the COVID period, we saw some things, and some things that really changed the way that maybe the way we sell is going to impact post-COVID. We saw video communications going mainstream. We saw obviously Zoom and Teams Hangout becoming standard, but not just standard for agencies or tech businesses or certain clients, but we saw it becoming, you know, more pervasive through, you know, young people, old people, through sectors that maybe would never have used video conferencing before. All of a sudden, there seemed to be this market saturation, and the importance of that for us now, especially for people in the regions. You know, I grew an agency outside of London, not in London, so I've always been a massive advocate of regions. You know, I believe that there, post-COVID, there could be a very, very strong redistribution of wealth, because video communications can empower people to work from wherever in the UK. And, you know, but the problem was always going to be certain sectors would never be able to keep up, you know, if they didn't move with the times of technology. But I think COVID's helped that. Some sectors that were behind the times got disrupted. There's no question that the events space, you know, it was basically lagging behind in many ways. But on top of that, obviously COVID, you know, did affect travel. It has affected the high street, and certain sectors got disrupted, but many sectors were able to pivot and adapt and actually make their businesses, you know, move forward and almost force them to move forward where they needed to happen. You know, we've seen a massive increase in D2C as a channel, direct to consumer, which is something that was happening, but probably happening a bit too slowly. So, so, you know, we've got things like TikTok, which, you know, let's face it, in March, for those of you who are on it, who've been on it for 5 years since it was Musical.ly, was basically full of, you know, very young teen kids and didn't seem to be going anywhere. But all of a sudden, the age range expanded up. And so all of a sudden, advertisers took it more seriously, and we started to see some tipping points around certain new platforms as well. So business transformation, you know, there was a lot of jokes around what's the biggest impact that you know that digital transformation has on your business. Does it come from the COO or the CEO, or has it COVID-19? The truth is that CEOs and CIOs have been trying to drive through change in their businesses, because technology, for the first time ever in history, is ahead of businesses. In the past, you know, technology was never strong enough or good enough to, or wasn't keeping up with the business. And now it's the other way around. And COVID has really accelerated a lot of businesses to think smarter about how they use technology in both their marketing and in the way that they, you know, they use technology to improve their business performance, products and services. And then the other thing we saw a lot, which I'm still yet to validate next year what will happen, because we did see this kind of massive 15% dip in service sector, then it sprung back and it seemed to recover very quickly in the last quarter's growth figures. But a lot of talk about video and social media still being the strongest growth areas next year, where other advertising and marketing channels are all going to be in a slight decline. We all saw the shift to LinkedIn. It was no longer about just the quality of content, but now you need to have a quantity too, to stand out, to get cut through. You know, we saw agencies like Made Brave and Social becoming, you know, building more and more and more sort of content and sort of standing out, and almost making it harder for a lot of smaller agencies to maybe get cut through. But you know, the change is really clear for us all to see. In the noughties, as I affectionately call them, I think we all got a bit lost hiding behind our agency brands, and we forgot about our personal brands. You know, we forgot that David Ogilvy was a key person of influence before he, Ogilvy became the brand it did. You know, if you look at the shift in the last few years now with owners, like if you look at business generally, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, or Sarah Blakely at Spanx, like all of those owners of multi-billion-pound companies are still there as the personality alongside the company brand. So we started to see that during this COVID period, and so of course organizational transformation started to take place, and we started to see that we can now work from anywhere, and that's obviously really helped a lot of these kind of earlier challenges in the marketplace. So look, I want to share with you today some practical actions that you can take. I've got 7 practical actions, not 3. I don't know where 3's come from, but there are 7 of them. And I want you to hopefully be able to take these away and put these in place yourselves, because I think if you do that, you will certainly improve your sales performance over the next few months. So the first thing is understand where your current lead sources are from. So look at my Cactus lead generation system, the 4 areas in this example here, just to show you, just score up which leads came from Nest, which leads came from marketing activity, which leads came from referrals from clients or ex-clients. which clients came from partnerships, and then basically work it out as a percentage and make the target 25% each now, and just see where you're strong and where you're weak, because then it gives you a chance to focus on getting a multi-prong attack. The second thing is that if less than 50% of your business comes from referrals, then you need to work on being better at driving referrals in your business. Ask your clients for introductions. Make sure that when you onboard clients, you tell them that as a business, you rely on referrals. Just really start looking and analyzing that. Make sure you always thank your referrers and reward them. Don't just take them for granted. If you've got more than 50% of your business coming from referrals, then go back to the Cactus lead system and work on those other areas. Prioritize your marketing. Here are the top 13 ways. I won't read them out. We're going to share the presentation, but the reality is networking, socializing, is still the number one way that leads are generated from the largest clients in businesses, followed by your ex-clients taking you with you and current clients referring you. So those top 3 areas are so key. But let's not rule out partnerships with your suppliers, with your technology partners, with your marketing partners. Team members, number 5 and number 6 in both surveys. Who are you recruiting? How good is their network? How well connected are they? What influences do they have in terms of their social media presence? And so I won't read them all out, but hopefully you'll see the list there is probably pretty self-explanatory. So make sure you're focusing on those areas rather than maybe some other areas that aren't. I would like to add that LinkedIn has been amazing for new business in the last 2 quarters. Last 6 months, I've seen it rise and rise. I mean, that's the fastest chart riser, let's call it, from the last 8 weeks. And I've validated those LinkedIn as also not just LinkedIn leads that have come from people you already know through your network, but actually come in from cold new sources. The 4th one is develop your personal brand strategy. Start with Daniel Priestley's book, Key Person of Influence. I think it's a wonderful book. It takes 12 months to develop your personal brand. I really recommend that everyone does it. Whether you're introverted or extroverted, it doesn't matter. There's an approach for you. Understand how to do that. And if you need help with that, your very own Ash Jones, the person who was behind Steve Bartlett, who's located in the Northwest, track him down, watch episode 23 of my interview with him. He helps you get over that fear. His number 1 task is to help you post, help you build on that. So I can't recommend him enough as someone to get in touch with. Start looking at the now, next, and future of your services and make sure that you're not being commoditized, and make sure you're talking about the now, next, and future. If a client is ever going to choose you over their existing incumbent, they're often going to be looking for someone who's looking ahead, not someone who's caught up in the now and not being proactive. So really start to understand that and watch commoditization, especially as we enter a new period of growth. Number 6, and the second to last, meaningful conversations. Again, listen to episode 26 of my podcast to understand more about it. But when I grew Blue Halo, I only had 1 KPI, which was to basically have 50 new conversations a month. I've developed that a bit further forward now and changed it to meaningful conversations, but keep an activity tracker. You don't have to network anymore. This is one of the beauties about post-COVID world. You can send someone a lovely message on email or LinkedIn or Twitter and arrange a video call and speak to them. You don't have to go and stand in a room holding onto a glass with a room full of suits. So take advantage of this new world order, but do it with volume. Have 2 conversations a day with people that you've worked with, or people that were ex-clients, or people you lost pitches to. Find those people and keep the conversations going. One of my clients had a 0 pipeline in June of this year. The 3 shareholders between them made 118 meaningful conversation video calls. When I went in 1 month later, their pipeline was 1.6 million, and they closed off 800,000 of that in the following 4 weeks. Yeah, this really works. Don't find excuses, overcome them, put it in. Find your number. For them, it's 118. Yeah, but they're a £4 million business. What's your number? Mine was 50. Find your number and make sure it's consistent. Lastly, create some kind of mantra if your pipeline's low to kickstart it. I've written these series of articles. They're in our community. It's called 50 Things in 50 Days. I'm only up to day 32, but try and find a way to put something new in around new business every single day. Because remember, no leads, no sales, no service, no people, no profit, no company, right? So everything starts with a lead. So thank you. I'll take any questions. Hope I didn't overrun too much then, Paul. But you know, please connect with Danny. He's in the Northwest, he's on your doorstep. And if you do connect to me, please send me a personal message, because I get so many people, you know, trying to connect at the moment. You will need my email address as well, but please send me a message. Thank you. How was that, Paul?
Thanks, Spencer. Could you stop? That was great, thank you. Can you stop sharing your screen a sec?
Indeed.
Can you see me or not?
Yeah.
Oh, show selfie, there it is. Cool. So I've got a couple of questions, Spencer. The first one was from Anthony, who said that there wasn't much mention of actual hunting or outbound activity, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. So I assume he's talking about targeted sales activity on targeted ideal leads that they've identified.
Okay, so you talk about hunting and targeting activity, because I don't believe that that's an effective way to win new business. It does work, and it is in the 40 ways. But, you know, first of all, I do believe that you should obviously create a client persona, and you should understand who your target audience is. But what you're trying to do is to drive an inbound from them. You're not trying to ring up and push to them. They're more than likely already going to have an agency they work with. You know, if you actually survey marketing managers, as an example, in fact, one of my clients just presented this to me 2 days ago, they'll all tell you if they answered every question from someone that prospected them, it would be a full-time job for them just dealing with the inbound inquiries. You know, if you are trying to win business, you've got to drive inbound. To drive inbound, you know, you've got to use your network and connections to get you people introducing you and referring you in. Yes, does it work? Yes, it does. Is it the hardest way to get new business? Yes, it is. And so focus on those 13 ways. Use those 13 ways to drive your persona as an inbound lead. If that answers the question.
Thanks, Spencer. Yeah, Anthony, let us know. He has also said great advice, Spencer, a few minutes later. So, and he's just said great, thanks. Yeah. So, I've got a question from Simon as well. Simon, curious to understand where you see peak demand for agency services, what skills and when. Okay.
Right now, where do I see the biggest demand? I think obviously agency landscape's very wide. In terms of digital marketing, you know, paid social and SEO. I mean, SEO has been the champion of the last 6 months over paid search. Most people who had paid search agencies got work paused. They may have swapped it to SEO, but most of the SEO guys I work with have grown through the last 6 month period. So I would say SEO is getting more sophisticated again, and that would be one area. I think the most growth has come from just generally with all agencies from looking for sectors that are fast growth. And there are a lot like SaaS, you know, online e-commerce, you know, there's a lot of areas that are growing very quickly right now. But in other areas it's funny, there was a mention at the beginning about distressed agencies. I've got to say, you know, I know something like 2,500 agencies, and I've only come across 4 that were distressed in 6 months. I say all 4 of them personally were businesses struggling beforehand. They were all WordPress agencies, and they're all agencies that were dealing with what I would say work that's very highly commoditized now, where maybe Cactus would have built a WordPress site 10 years ago. It's all on Squarespace now, right? And it's quicker for me to update my website than it is to brief an agency. So I think if you're in web development, moving into digital transformation is very key. I see data being a very fast growth area. Most agencies or people I've spoken to are starting businesses. I've seen a lot in data. Moving on in creative services, a big uplift in obviously new channels like TikTok, but also I've seen a big uplift in AI, in immersive experience. Those agencies are slowly, you know, AR, VR, that kind of area has definitely been picking up as well. So it's more the sort of less commoditized, you know, sort of more neuroscience areas as well. So, you know, definitely there is you know, a shift moving forwards now. So whatever you're doing, you need to go up the value chain. That's where the money's at. Hope that helps. It's a big area covering every agency, right? Because, you know, there's so many different sort of strains to an agency, but certainly if you've got technology at the heart of your business, there's no reason why you're going backwards right now. I don't see agency sector, with the exception of events, or if you're extremely unlucky and you were dealing with travel, the leisure industry, you know, high street retail, you know, those 6 or 7 sectors out of probably 100 are probably the ones that, you know, are going to cause some effect on a business.
And for those reasons as well is why mergers and acquisitions could be a good strategy for some agencies. You talked about, if the founder leadership team not necessarily gravitate towards sales and marketing, but they can acquire other agencies got those skills. But also the other stuff you talked about there, big businesses want to have agencies that can be best of breed in all those different areas, and it's not easy to build it organically.
I mean, just to be really clear on that, I sold a business for 9 million in March. I've got one going through for 12 million now. I'm seeing, M&A at a premium level, no bargains, but like genuinely premium. I've seen a lot of people doing acquisitions on maybe people who are just a little bit tired of agency life or have invented a product or looking to retire. I agree with the comment earlier on about employee ownership trust. There's definitely an increase in demand for handing over the legacy, maybe older agency owners paying onto their leadership teams and getting them to then take over the business. But I think M&A activity is very buoyant, not like in 2008-9, I fell off a cliff, right? But this time it's buoyant, but again, not really necessarily bargains. I've seen a lot of just genuinely good, transactions happening. And yes, I think there are some stories of people coming together, especially when you're a single agency founder owner and it's lonely for you.
Yeah.
Come together with somebody else and try and share that responsibility.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people hang on, by the way, so they're obviously enjoying the conversation. So
I can take other questions if it's not just sales.
And if anyone's got a longer question they'd prefer just to ask it out loud, just put a comment in the chat and I'll unmute you. How, Spencer, do you help somebody who's maybe not been involved in mergers and acquisitions before? It's a new world to them. How do you help them to identify whether it could be something worth exploring for them, or whether their business and themselves are well suited to it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there's several reasons why you'd buy an agency, right? The first thing is sometimes because you have some great clients and you believe you can cross-sell new services to them, but you maybe don't have the expertise to sell that service. I mean, you could probably recruit and blag and win it, but sometimes it's nice. I've got, some clients have done that. They bought to cross-sell. Some people do it because they want to be in a different geography. I wonder whether post-COVID that will matter as much, maybe not. But, for example, buying a team in LA, Canada, or London, sometimes that can be useful. There's another reason to buy a business might be that you just can't, you can't recruit fast enough and you need to recruit people, or maybe as a leadership team, you're missing something. So maybe as an owner, you're a creative and it'd be good to you to buy another business where the founder is maybe more of a strategist or an extroverted speaker, evangelist or something like that. So I think first of all, understand why you want to buy. And then I think it's, once you've done that, my approach normally is sort of twofold. The first thing is just, create a little brief, but then go out and actually try and draw up a list of people yourself and just go out and talk to other agency owners and to ask them what their plans are for the future. And I mean, I'll give you one story from last year, which we did, which I think is a really nice example of M&A to help someone grow. We worked with someone down south in Winchester in a region. It was £1 million turnover agency, but he'd been going for about 15 years, run by an artist, a creative director. And we found another local creative business, slightly different creative services. And the guy was 65 years old. He wanted to retire. He had £1 million in the bank. So we helped our client buy him out, use the money in the business to give him the entrepreneur's relief, the 10% tax. Yeah. And it cost us £15,000 to buy £1 million business. The person selling was really happy because he'd managed to hand his team over to someone else new to look after. So, if you do it in a really smart way, it can be a really, really valuable approach. But I'd probably try and, build some network yourself first. And then after that, go and speak to a broker maybe and get them to help find you some targets. But you guys offer a service now. Is that what you were saying as well, Paul? To help?
Yeah, there's a lot more activity. What we're trying to help businesses do, I think you mentioned it in your book, is like the percentage of businesses that actually sell is like a fraction of a percent. And it's the problem with typical corporate finance is you can put a lot of money into it before you realize that actually maybe it's not for you, or maybe that the right type of business isn't out there. So we're just helping agencies to better understand that world and to confidentially put put their business out as a potential exit or acquiring opportunity, and just see what comes back. And then we take them through a process where for very little outlay, they can start to have some meetings and get a flavour for what that looks like. And then they can, if they decide to pull out, they've not lost too much.
Yeah.
I've got another question for you, but I'm going to be cheeky and see if Tobin will let me unmute him. Allow to talk, the power. You still there, Tobin?
Oh, sorry, I've just unmuted.
That's all right. You had a question for Spencer. I just thought it'd be nice for you to ask him yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you, Spencer. I've got my 4-year-old with me, so hopefully she won't be too vocal.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I think I got the gist from what you were saying before, but most of our, like for my business, we're probably around the £1 million mark turnover, and we get I'd say 99% of our new business inquiries come through SEO, and we only really rank on one keyword. And I was kind of thinking, I mean, I've experimented with lots of different lead sources, but I was thinking, where would you recommend would be the next best place to look? Because obviously SEO is great, but I keep thinking it'd be nice if there was a bit more spread, if you like, even.
Sure. And you know, so I will speak quite generally here. So, you know, look, there's always exceptions. Don't shoot me down. But on the whole, people that grow their business, you know, SEO, by the way, is in the top 12, 13 ways. It is one of the things that you should be doing and investing in. As bigger clients actually come from SEO, not paid search, and you find that the bigger clients actually, weirdly, on the whole, there's always an exception, I accept, but actually normally the bigger clients won't use paid search. They'll know them. They might sometimes SEO because someone's recommended them personally, but so SEO is great. It's there. The challenge with SEO is you have to, as you probably are going to validate, hopefully, you have to qualify quite hard often. You get a lot of price buyers on SEO or paid search typically. And so you have to qualify quite a bit. It takes time and a lot of experience to learn to weed out the ones that aren't relevant. And also you can get a lot of the same. So you can get a lot of the same type of client in. So, you know, you don't get much diversity in your clients often. It tends to be the same thing. So look, I'm a massive fan of SEO. It's, you know, it's part of it. But the reality is I would probably, if I was you, I'd put some kind of referral engine into your business. So I would be thinking the first thing I would do is go back, look to anyone that's ever referred you a piece of business. I'm imagining that must have happened from previous clients that you've had.
Definitely,
I'd go there. I'd make sure that you thanked them, you know, write a list of them all down and find out. I remember when I worked with Mando in Liverpool, went in there, 18 years they've been in business, never thanked anyone for a lead they'd given them. They invited 18 people to a dinner. Listen, we can't do that because of COVID. We've got to be a bit more creative with what you do. 18 of them to a dinner at the top of a building in Liverpool. One of the guys went back and said, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate the gesture of saying thank you. I'm sorry I can't make the dinner, but actually I've got 150 grand lead for you. Could you help me out with this?" And, you know, so the invite alone helped. So I would say try and look at all those areas around referring, look at who's referred, try and drive more referrals from clients. So I would probably start there next. I would probably just start building some conversations with people that maybe you used to work with, or, you know, just the meaningful conversations route. Listen to my interview with Nathan if you can. He gives some fantastic advice on what he does, what his approach is. I've seen him grow from a £20,000 a month agency to $1 million in the 6 months of COVID. So he's doing something right. But for you to get through the $1 million mark, I'm going to pretty much tell you that you won't have enough marketing momentum to get much further unless you get this multi-prong attack happening. So, you know, you're going to need to have multiple channels pushing through to do that. So someone said to me the other day, what would you do if you started an agency tomorrow? I said, read Key Person of Influence, get LinkedIn training. I would build my personal brand, which I've spent the last couple of years doing anyway. And I would, you know, I would do 50 meaningful conversations a month. That would be my first starting point. So, but, you know, look at those 12.
A bit of advice right there. Thank you.
Yeah. Go and, you know, but don't rely on the SEO, because if for whatever reason you lose that, you've got your one tap turned off, right? So
I've seen it turned off before, where it's dropped from like 16 leads a month down to 2, and it's scary times. So yeah, you're absolutely right there. Well, thank you very much for that. That's
no worries.
some notes.
So I've just had a WhatsApp message saying Spencer's talk is really useful. Looking forward to the slides. Missed a couple scrolling ideas on my whiteboard. So
yeah, sorry, I knew that you were going to share them, so I was going through.
Yeah, that's good. That's great, Spencer. Thank you. You mentioned Mando, so that brings me nicely on to final thing, which is just to I've posted next time's event, which we're going to be joined by Matt Johnson, who actually sold out. He was one of the founders of Mando in Liverpool, and he successfully sold out to his business partner there. He's going to be on talking next month, along with Rachel Wilson of KW Digital, who's going to be talking about offshoring as a model for delivering services. So she's got some in-house and offshore teams, and she's going to talk about some advice that she's got there about how she's been able to make that work successfully. So we'll get all the slides out, guys. Anything, Spencer, Victoria, and the Bulletproof team that you want us to share, let me know. And if there's anything else that we can help with, drop me an email and we can get all that sent out with the email in the next few days, along with the recording as well. Thanks, Leon. Thanks, Tobin. Brill. I think we're about done. Thanks for your time, Spencer.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for inviting me.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.